Facebook has made billions out of its platforms, but it's avoided any responsibility for content by saying we're not the publisher. If Facebook were an old-fashioned publisher, so the platform was a newspaper, they would be liable for what appeared. And we've got to make the publishers liable. That would completely change the behaviour and the culture of this industry. It would then in turn companies like Facebook and Google to pin down the correct identities of those who are using those platforms. The same applies to Twitter. If you think about it, it's completely crazy that we've allowed a world where online you don't have to prove who you are. You can make up any name at all. But if the police stop you and ask for your driving license and you say, well, no, that's wrong. This is the name I use and this is my identity. They'd say, hang on a second, take you down to the police station. You want to claim benefits. Oh, no, these are not my circumstances. That somebody else is making them up. You think, hang on, this is ridiculous. Yet that is exactly what the system and the law is allowing people to do online, and it's got to be ended. And that requires politicians, Parliament, getting a grip of this. But if Facebook and Google, and after all, two of them between them, control an astonishing amount of all advertising in this country and cream off revenues from it, if they've got any sense, they'll be making these decisions before the regulators get to them. Rockefeller's Standard Oil built up this astonishing monopoly in oil products and oil, and really was using its monopoly power ruthlessly and thought that it was too big to be regulated. In the end, people in America just got fed up with this abuse of power, and it was regulated, and the antitrust laws were developed, and Standard Oil was broken up. And the same has to happen to Google and Facebook. We can't have a situation where behemoths of that size are only responsible to what amounts to a few shareholders. And the shareholders, I mean, Zuckerberg, obviously, because he's a huge shareholder in Facebook, can exercise astonishing influence over what happens, but he's one person. And it's profoundly undemocratic for the major media platforms, modern society, not to be regulated in a way which is democratically accountable. So it's going to have to change. And ultimately, Google and Facebook operate within nation states, which have effective political systems, especially in Europe and North America. And again, I say to them, wake up and start to change and show accountability, because otherwise you'll pay a very high price for what appears to be arrogance. What I do know is that there has to be regulation of the use of the internet and the use of all data, which was the purpose of the Data Protection Act back in 1998, which I introduced, and now of the wider data protection regulations from the European Union. And you have to have someone to enforce, to police those regulations, who's the Information Commissioner. Whether people in the ICO's office know all about the modern industry which is represented at this conference, with firms that I've heard of some, but by no means all of them, I don't know. What I think there has to be, if there isn't, is a deep dialogue between industry representatives and the ICO's office. And I was saying to one of the colleagues at the conference, not just at the most senior level, so you want to talk to the Information Commissioner herself, but it's also about getting in the reads, where the work is done in the ICO's office, where the casework decisions are proposed about, should we go down hard on this apparent breach or not? Talking to those people, I think, is very, very important, and making sure that they are up to date with what is a very, very fast changing environment.